Hey, welcome to the show. I'm John,
I'm JR. How you doing?
and today we have Chris Haughey. Howie, how do you say it?
Yeah.
Haughey.
Hoy.
Boy,
There you go.
What nationality is that? Is that like
Irish.
Irish. Well,
It's Irish.
I'm McNeely. So
Oh, there we go. So
Okay, so today we have Chris, bass player for Trace Adkins, my road cigar smoking buddy,
right.
cuddle buddy when we're watching movies in the front lounge.
supposed to say that.
See, now these are the reasons that I'm glad I'm not on
Those
the
are the road secrets, man. Come on, we can't let just anybody know about that.
So Chris is a great bass player, great friend. Tell a little bit about you that I know about you,
Yep.
and we'll get into that.
All right.
So you studied at Juilliard,
Wow.
classical,
Classical.
okay, upright predominantly.
Yes,
And then you went to the U.S. Air Force Band, right?
I did. Yep.
Yeah. And then, but didn't you go to college in Ohio and
I
get a
did.
master's?
I did my master's at University of Cincinnati
Okay.
and part of a doctorate, believe it or not. I
Okay.
never finished that degree.
Okay.
You're almost a doctor?
Well, I wouldn't say almost, but
And then you,
I checked a
doctor
few
is
boxes
in it.
off.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
then
That's
you moved
awesome.
to Nashville with your family, wife and two kids, and started doing some sessions. You've done some road stuff with like
Yep.
Daniel Peck and some other artists and stuff. And then you got the gig with Trace,
I did.
which made my life easy.
Yep. Ditto.
So anyway, tell us, I got a little question about
Yeah.
like, when did you start and what made you want to go to Juilliard?
So when I was in elementary school, I don't know if this is still a thing, but there was actually a school orchestra program in elementary school, believe it or not.
It should
I
be
know
a thing.
it should be a thing. I know the school that my kids go to does not really have that.
Yeah.
They're partially because I think there aren't enough kids there to sustain a full, string program or
Right.
even a band program. They go to pretty small schools. But it was not required to do that. But what they told us was you had to start on violin in third grade if you wanted to move to a different instrument
Wow.
in fourth grade, and then eventually they offered band in sixth grade.
Wow.
But you had to start on violin.
So,
So
violin, that's like one of the hardest instruments to play on the planet. I mean, like for me,
I was terrible.
I can pick up an instrument with strings on it and kind of get some sounds out of it. You give me a violin and it's going to sound like, sheep dying or something.
I don't know how
and it's the
people do
worst.
that. I
I don't
mean,
either.
to cram their fingers
It's
together, like,
amazing.
it's pretty incredible. But that's where I started.
So do you still play violin?
Oh no, no, that was a one and done. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, I would not be sitting here talking to you if I still played violin. I'm sure I'd probably be homeless somewhere. But I honestly don't remember anything about wanting to play upright bass other than they said you can move to viola, cello, or bass in fourth grade, but we're only picking 2 kids to play the bass. And I thought, wow, what gets anybody motivation to do
Right.
something other than to tell them basically you can't do it, right? Or there's a very slim chance that you can
That's
do
awesome.
it. So, I mean, honestly, I think that was just the motivation. I was like, well, I wonder if I'll be one of the 2 picked to play bass.
So you started out on upright rather than electric bass. Like
That's right.
me, for example, I mean, it was, when I discovered rock and roll, it was all about, Paul McCartney and Geddy Lee and that sort of thing.
That's right.
But that's interesting that you actually started out classically trained as an upright player, and then now you're playing with Trace Adkins. That's really awesome.
It's why, I mean, and I don't want to jump the gun too much and get into it, but I joke with John over here sometimes that I kind of do a lot of things in my life backwards. I've done them backwards. Like I did all of my schooling up to almost, half a doctorate. And then I joined the military.
Wow.
And then I had kids. And then I got a bunch of tattoos after I already got out. So it's kind of like the story of my life. I mean, why not start with upright bass and
Hey,
just kind
why
of?
not? I think it's awesome.
So
Anyways, so you started the upright bass.
Yep.
You're playing in school.
Yep. So yeah, that was. I mean, there was a couple years there where, just did the school orchestra thing. Didn't really think too much of it. I was really into playing baseball. That was kind of my thing. Was playing on a couple select teams, playing on a fall ball team. I mean, my whole life pretty much revolved around playing baseball at that time. I honestly don't remember really what clicked or what changed. I mean, I got into middle school, which at that time was 7th grade. I'm old. And I just, something clicked. I think it was a combination of there was another friend I had in school who was a bass player who was really good. I mean, I think we were both probably pretty good compared to what we had around us, and started doing some regional orchestra things. Like I did youth orchestra, and then there was another sort of a tier right under youth orchestra, which basically all of the youth orchestra kids did anyway, that orchestra. So I just fell in love with it, you know? Music always came really naturally to me. Playing baseball was great. I had a lot of fun. I had some success, but it didn't really come naturally to me. I felt like I always was constantly having to work harder for it, and wasn't seeing the gains that maybe I expected or that I wanted to.
Right.
From working in music. I feel like I could minimally work at music and have a lot of success. So
Yeah, it's a gift, man, and that's really cool. That's really cool.
So after your school years, what led you to Juilliard?
So that friend that I talked about, before his junior year of high school, so we went to the same middle school and we went to the same high school together. And before his junior year of high school, somehow he found out about this program, the Juilliard pre-college program. And his parents let him go up to New York and live there by himself, do this pre-college, this preparatory program for the last 2 years of his high school. So he was gone our junior year. And I would see him like I remember going to a St. Louis Symphony Orchestra concert with him when he came back, I think on Thanksgiving break, and would talk to him about it. And he was pretty encouraging of, hey, you know, you should think about doing this if you're able to do this. And of course, being at that time 16 or 17, I didn't really know what that meant. You know, leaving home, having to have my parents pay for an apartment and pay for, you know, other things that I was 18 when I went there, but still.
Well,
but we
even just
talked
to get into Juilliard. I mean, that's kind of a big deal, isn't it? I mean, it's not real easy. It's not like, hey, I'm going to go to Juilliard, you know?
I don't think it's.
You got to be good.
Your
You got to audition.
average man on the street just
right.
submit an application and get in. But the pre-college program was a little different. I mean, I think they still had very high standards, but you know, it wasn't quite. It was a very good preparation for the college program. But there were many conversations. I know Joel's parents, I think, talked to my parents a lot, and there were lots of phone calls and back and forth. And how are we going to do this? Is it worth it? Is this really what I want to do? Are you really dedicated to doing this? And all of those answers were yes. To give it my best shot. So my senior year, he'd already been up there for a year. My senior year, I went there and I lived in New York, did the pre-college program, studied with the teacher that I eventually studied with in the college program, who happened to be my teacher back home in St. Louis, was his teacher.
Oh, wow.
So it had that kind of lineage there. And I auditioned for it, got it, and moved to New York my senior year. I was only a few credits away from being able to graduate high school, so I remember there was a correspondence course that I was eligible for to where I still got a high school diploma. I mean, I think I only needed to take a couple classes via correspondence, and I didn't walk, I wasn't able to do that, but I still got a diploma from my high school. I think that's pretty fair trade-off, right?
So what was the transition from Juilliard that made you, what was your reasoning going into the Air Force? Was it because of the Air Force band, or was it?
It was.
Or was it more schooling?
It was more schooling after that. So probably around my senior year, senior year, you know, you kind of start thinking, well, what next, right? You're so close. And in the classical music world, I mean, it's really, unless you somehow are able to land a job and win an audition while you're in school or shortly after, I mean, the logical step is to go to graduate school, which I would say 99% of the people I knew did that because we didn't have jobs yet, unless you wanted to just take a different path. So I was thinking, what next? And graduate school, you know, getting a master's degree is typically 2 years. And so the thought was, well, I could stay in New York, but then there's still a what next after that.
Right.
New York at that time, I graduated in 2005. New York was getting expensive. And I saw the people that were freelancing there and living there. And I didn't want that lifestyle. I think it was a lot of stress. I mean, it's always a lot of stress being a freelance musician. how are you going to pay your rent? How are you going to pay your utilities? How are you going to live? And I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to go. I already had a connection with the teacher at in Cincinnati. Aspen Music Festival is a summer festival that I did for, I think, 6 years, non-consecutively. But I would study with him in the summers. So I had that connection. He wanted me to go there for undergrad. I ended up staying in New York, but then I chose that for grad school. I mean, it was a lot closer to home. I could drive back to St. Louis if I wanted to, closer to my folks. Much more reasonably priced place to live in the Midwest, while still having a lot of freelance opportunities. Okay. And I think that ended up being the right call for me, for sure. I mean, after there was a period of a couple years that I got my master's and finished school before the Air Force, that I was freelancing. But it kind of goes into your question, what led me to the Air Force? At that point, my wife and I were not married yet. We were dating. We were living together. And I was collecting tax returns from 5 different states, if I was lucky. And she was busting it too, just trying to work odd jobs. And that really wasn't the life I wanted for either of us either. You know, we were okay. We had a house. You know, we were doing okay, but it was a struggle. Yeah. It was a real struggle. And I just happened to see a posting on a base forums website about a job opportunity at Scott Air Force Base, which I knew was just outside of St. Louis, and it was the Air Force Band. So the opportunity to play music for a living, to get a salary, to get healthcare for me and for Jamie, to move closer to home, to have a little bit of stability. I mean, all of those things, it was kind of a no-brainer to at least go for that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you know, a lot of people don't realize, you know, the people that don't play music just assume, oh, well, you're a musician, you're going to be a professional musician, and you just go and you get a job somewhere, and it's just not like that. I mean, it's
no,
it's very difficult.
No, you know, at that time, I don't want to get too off topic, but I was working at Target toward the end of my grad school just to kind of make ends meet, along with the regional orchestra things I was doing. Jamie was working a couple jobs, and it was a struggle even to get hired. I know we both applied for Starbucks just to find something. Neither of us even got called for an interview for Starbucks. Oh, so it was, you know, not even trying to go out and get a music job, but just go out and get a job in general was, I won't say it's as bad as it is now, but it was not, it was a weird time in the economy, that 2009 era. It was very strange. And any stability was something that I felt like I had to go for and latch onto pretty quickly.
So I got to ask about, okay, so it was the Air Force Band, so that means you join the Air Force, and that means you become a soldier. I mean, you're in the Air Force now, and it's like, what kind of change was that? Was that like a complete shock to, oh my gosh, great gig, but now I have to get up at the crack of dawn and, you know, reveille? I don't know how that all works. But, you know.
It was, leading up to it, there were some mental games going on for sure. This is a whole separate conversation in itself, but it took me a while to actually enlist, just due to some paperwork things and trying to get that process going. I think I won the audition in October, and I didn't ship off to basic training until June. So I had a large period of time, for better or for worse, I don't know which one, to do some research to find out what I was getting into. So I feel like I had time to prepare for it. I think if I would have won the gig and then shipped off to basic the next month, it might have been a little different. But I was older too. I turned 29 in basic training, so I wasn't. I had lived life. I was used to people yelling at me. I was used to people not liking me.
You still are. You're working with John.
Well, I just hear him yelling about me. He's pretty good about not yelling face to face.
Yeah, whatever.
But I think I was a little more mature than most people, just age-wise, going on. I'd lived some life, so it wasn't as big a shock as it might have been had I done that earlier in life. But I mean, seeing some of these 17, 18-year-olds going in, being in basic training with them, I don't think I could have done that at 17 or 18.
And you went to the Middle East as well, right?
I did.
Yep.
I did. I deployed in 2014.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So, after all that, you come to Nashville. What was the big starry-eyed dream of Nashville, or was it a starry-eyed dream?
It was, and to some extent, it still is. I think. I don't feel, I consider myself incredibly lucky for the things that I've been able to do since I moved here in 2017. I mean, I feel like for all intents and purposes, it was a relatively fast track. I'm grateful for that. I know it doesn't happen for everybody. But the initial dream was to come and play sessions. That's really what I love doing. And I didn't know how to do that other than to just move here, network, talk to a lot of people, talk about their experience with them, about how they were able to do that.
Because there's no schooling for that, really.
There's no schooling and there's no
Right.
blueprint for it.
Right,
you know.
exactly.
I talked with somebody who laid out, I think, 3 really great options, 3 really great avenues of you could do it this way, you could do it this way, or you could do it this way. These are probably the most popular is not the word I'm looking for, but
Right.
but the most feasible ways to do that. And so having that goal of being in the studio and wanting to be in the studio, I realized I was just going to have to network. I was going to have to get out and play, and that's what I tried to do. I mean, I moved here the first week, and I ended up getting a church gig, and that's really
A lot of those out here.
a lot of those out here would, but it's
We've all
great
done 'em.
though for anybody thinking about moving. That should maybe be your number 1 or number 2 stop, is trying to. It's a great way to network. It's a great way to network with not only a small group of people, but my situation, we had sub players in kind of every other week or so for whatever instrument, and I met so many people that first year. I'm not sure that I would have had the success had I not had that weekly experience.
Well, so now let me ask. Okay, so in moving to Nashville, the classical. I mean, was there any, ever any thought of, well, maybe I could get in with the Nashville Symphony, or was it kind of like I'm an electric player at this point? And
I think I had moved on from that.
okay,
I mean, I would love to. I've just now kind of started playing more upright in the last year than I have since I've been to town, which is it's been fun. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss it. I think I've missed it a little more. I think sometimes Jamie, my wife, misses it more for me
Right.
than I do. But I would not be open to something like that. But I think it just wasn't. I got pretty burned out on that whole world, and on the experiences I had. I don't think it was just because of rejection or anything like that. It was just I worked hard. I had my nose down, and you guys know, doing anything like that at that level, with the stress of trying to create a life for yourself and get a
Right.
job. I mean, you do that for too long, and you just. I think I had just moved on from that.
well, and you seem like a really down to earth, normal guy, and some of those string players are just. I've been through some string sessions where it's just like, oh my gosh.
No comment. No.
You had any
Pretentious,
gold coupons?
No offense.
Yeah.
But exactly.
Well, it is for sure a different world.
So you're in Nashville. You started doing some sessions. Toured with Danielle Peck a little bit.
I played with
some
her.
other-
Yeah, I played with her. I toured with a guy named George Burge, who is he's a new artist at this point, but he's already had a number 1. He's had a great amount of success. Was
Oh, that's great.
very very pleased for him. Very happy for him. I'm still a huge fan, even though I'm
Right.
not playing with him anymore. But yeah, and
And now you got the gig with Trace.
I got the gig with Trace, and
That's a funny story how that came. So during the audition process, I'm not going to mention any names, but we had a guy in there that wasn't working out, and our band leader Brent had talked to you previously, and then talk a little bit about that phone call, how that went, and what led up to that. Like to show, so, like a lot of people don't understand, like the sacrifice that goes into trying to get a gig, right? So, and that was was that Easter weekend?
it was Easter weekend.
It was Easter weekend, and
It was Easter weekend.
So, explain a little bit of that. See, because we were in the studio auditioning somebody, and it wasn't what we thought. We'll just leave it at that. And then, so Brent stepped outside and gave you a call.
So first, I just want to say before that, in the spirit of things coming first, full circle and irony, what actually essentially put my name in the running for this was studio work. It was my connections in the studio that got me this gig. So that was kind of backwards from the way I thought things would work out.
Right?
Tim Galloway.
Tim
Love you,
Galloway
Tim.
referred you.
Yeah, that was
He's a great guitar player.
great guitar player, great guy, great advocate for all musicians.
Yep.
Fantastic human. So Brent had reached out to me, I think it was on a Saturday or a Sunday, and I'm not going to mention any names, but I would say I was probably on the most uncomfortable gig experience of my entire life. It was one of those, and I won't get into any specifics, but pretty much everything about this run was not ideal, from the pay to the travel to the music. I mean, everything was just, it was one of those where you're there and you're traveling and you're like, what am I doing?
You're just grinding for a bit of money, and that's
just
and
paying your bills.
I didn't have anything else going on, and so it would have been stupid not to do it. But it was really one of those, it's like, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing here? And I woke up on Saturday morning, got a text from Tim Galloway, said, hey, I put your name in the hat for a road gig. I hope that's cool with you. Great people, great players, really good situation overall. I said, of course, man, thank you. I really appreciate it. And he said, I don't know if anything's going to come from it. I think they may already have a guy in mind, but it never hurts. And so I was grateful even for the opportunity to have my name thrown out there, because you guys know that can lead to things too. Whether it's immediate or somewhere down the road. That's networking. That's what it's about. Long story short, that guy was pretty locked in with you guys. I guess I think in Brent's words, he had cut ties with his former gig, and so I was like, you know what? That's great. If I were on the receiving end of that, that's how I would want it to go too. I wouldn't want to feel like there was anything funny going on. And we left it at that. I was grateful for the opportunity, and hopeful that there were more things to come. On Wednesday, Brent reached back out and said, I just got this nagging thing. I feel like I want to hear you. I feel like we want to hear you. Can you come in Friday? I said, sure, absolutely. I was blown away. I remember texting my wife and said, put the tea kettle on, get it ready. I'm gonna be in there cramming tunes all day long. And then Brent reached back out and said, it's not going to be Friday. It's actually going to be tomorrow. So,
welcome to Nashville.
Welcome to Nashville. If there's anything worth doing, it's worth going all the way. So that was from that day, from the Thursday where I had the audition, then through Easter weekend, and I didn't know until Friday, and we had plans as a family to go out of town and see the kids' godparents back in Ohio. And I told Jamie, I said, I don't know when I'm going to find out, but you all need to go to Ohio without me, because if for some reason they call, I'm going to need to stay here and get the rest of my work done. So it was Friday morning. They left about 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and I think I paced around the house for a couple hours until I got the text from Brent.
Wow.
Yeah, that was awesome. So the minute you came in and played, we knew. It was like, man, this is the guy. This is the guy. And it's been great ever since.
I'm glad you all knew that, because I sure didn't know that in the moment.
We knew. It was just, the politics of how we're going to get around it. But we knew that the situation that it was, So anyway, well, that's good. Now I got a guy that keeps me in check on the road. Dude,
Who's that? I want to meet him.
I got to play better just to keep up with
Oh
you.
my gosh.
All right, Chris. So we got a little segment that we call "What You Smoking."
That's right.
So what you smoking?
I'm smoking a Perdomo 30th anniversary Maduro, and this is probably my favorite stick of all time.
Yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Thank you, John, for getting me hooked on Perdomo.
Yeah.
See, Nick, if you're watching, old John Spittle over there is selling your cigars.
Yes, I
He's
am.
smoking
right.
most of them, probably
And he's-
single-handedly keep you in business.
He's sold a lot of them to me. That is
Well, it
100%
is such a really good
accurate.
stick, man.
But JR, what you smoking?
So today, I am smoking the Enclave Broadleaf by AJ Fernandez. I've become a huge fan of everything AJ Fernandez does, the H. Upman stuff, the Enclave, the New World, great cigars. So that's what I'm smoking today. What about you, John?
I'm smoking not a Perdomo after all of that, but it's a leaf
Leaf
by
Oscar.
Oscar
Those are good.
Maduro. Very good cigar. I
Those are
enjoy it.
surprising because it's funny. You get those cigars and they're wrapped in that tobacco leaf and it looks
Right.
like hell. I mean,
Yes.
it looks pretty nasty, but then you open it up and there's this beautiful smoke sitting
Beautiful
there.
cigar.
And they're just so
Yeah.
good.
It's a great
That's
cigar.
awesome.
I enjoy it a lot.
Were you smoking one of those on the road?
I did. I
weeks ago?
smoked one. I
Okay,
brought
yeah,
one out.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So Chris,
Sir.
there's another thing that we do.
Okay.
Okay, imagine you're on a desert island for
All right.
24 hours.
Oh boy.
You're stranded, but you've heard that a cruise ship is coming back the next day to pick you up, so you
Okay.
know you're going to be okay.
Gotcha.
But you're stuck, and you've only got 3 cigars, 1 bottle. It can be bourbon, it could be water, it can be anything you want, and 1 album. You got 24 hours, 3 cigars, 1 bottle, 1 album. What are they?
Okay. Which one do you want first?
Cigars?
Cigars first. Okay. Well, I mean, favorite stick of all time. I think this would have to be on there
So
for
the
sure.
Perdomo 30 would be one of them.
Perdomo 30. I would probably choose the Perdomo barrel aged as number 2.
The 12 year.
The
12 years.
Oh,
12
those are
years.
good.
Yeah, that's a great cigar.
And sorry, Nick, I'm gonna have to break from you on this third one. Third one would probably be a blackened Connecticut.
Yeah.
Man, I'd heard that the Hetfield and that whole, it's like, you think, okay, well, it's a celebrity, it's probably, whatever, but
That's right.
man, that is a good cigar.
Sometimes I'm totally with you. Sometimes that shticky
Yeah.
sort of celebrity endorsed, is this really going to be worth it? I was blown away, and first time I smoked one was we were on the road and somebody gave one to me to smoke, and I was floored. Not only that it wasn't a Maduro, because that's typically what I gravitate toward anyway, but it was just such a well-balanced, such a good smoke. Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm
So
a
that'd
fan
be
for
the 3.
sure.
So you got the 30 year, the 12 year, and the blackened.
The blackened Connecticut.
The Connecticut.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So what about a bottle?
Bottle. This is a lot harder.
But you got to pick one.
I know. All right, I'm getting to
24
it.
hours.
All right, 20. Okay, so this is pretty easy. I would choose a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle rye.
Okay.
Say that 5 times fast.
Happy Van Winkle. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good bottle.
you are a snob.
I'm a snob, and I realize I have passed
So
over.
no wild turkey.
No, I mean, if that was the only choice for 24 hours, I think I would be able to make do.
Sure.
But,
Boone's Farm.
Get you some country quencher and a couple of Swisher Sweets.
I have a buddy. I don't know if he still drinks this. I'm gonna throw him under the bus, but he went through a phase where all he drank was early times.
Oh, it's never
Oh,
too
yeah.
early for early times.
You probably, I mean, you'd have to you probably wouldn't even know it's on the shelf unless you had to bend down and tie your shoelaces.
Oh, man.
But that's what he likes. So
All right, so we got the 3 cigars, we got the bottle. So what
Yep.
would be the album you would listen
all right. This is a little bit of an oddball choice. I mean, maybe not for me, but I would probably choose the John Mayer live album,
Okay.
live in LA.
to? All right.
And I like John. I know he sometimes takes a lot of heat, but I do like his guitar playing and singing.
great.
But I chose that album because of Pino Palladino
Oh,
and
there
Steve
you
Jordan
go.
on
There you
drums.
go. Well, I mean,
There's
good
a
Lord, rhythm
combo.
section for
And
days.
I mean, every time I listen to their trio portion of that record, because I think it's almost, you get 3 in 1, right? He does an acoustic set on there, he does his trio portion, then he does kind of his full band set.
All right.
But the trio portion of that record is, I can listen to that for weeks on end and hear something new each time I listen to
Well, Pino Palladino, I mean, good Lord, legend.
it. Legendary. The god of nuance and melody and smoothness. And
He's the
just-
only guy that can play out of time, and it feels just so
and
good.
it feels right. He knows exactly what to play
Yeah.
and when to play it. He knows exactly, I mean, and the guy has monster chops, and he doesn't feel the need to show them off.
Right.
I mean, except in those very specific moments, and it's really incredible.
That's cool.
So that would probably be my 24-hour
All
record
right.
for sure.
That's great. All right, so I got to ask, being a fellow bass player,
Yes.
who is your guy? I mean, who is the bass player? And I know that's a tough question because there's
It's not
so-
for me. Pino.
Oh, well, there you
I
go.
mean, that's-
Pino Palladino.
He's the guy. I remember specifically the moment where I found out who Pino was and what he was doing. So I grew up listening to a lot of classic rock. My dad was very much into I mean, he got me into Dire Straits,
Oh, yeah.
listening to the Eagles, of course, listening to a lot of Jackson Brown. But I remember hearing Don Henley, New York Minute. And fretless bass, I was like, what in the world is going on here? Who did this? I have to learn everything about this. And oddly enough, I think shortly after that, my parents had gotten me a subscription to Bass Player magazine, and New York Minute, Pino was featured on the cover, and they had a transcription of New York Minute.
Oh, wow.
So I sat up in my room for weeks trying to decode this thing and decipher it and get his nuance not on a fretless, which is,
Right.
that was probably my first mistake. But just digging in and being able to have it all laid out in front of you, see the lines, see what he was doing, see how he crafted it around what else was happening in the track.
Yeah, that's a great
That was
track.
my introduction to Pino, and I think I never really looked back.
Very cool.
But I got to give an honorable mention, being an upright player too, to my guy Christian McBride,
Okay.
who is, I think, probably one of the most incredible bass players alive today.
Wow.
His ability to double on upright and electric, and you wouldn't, I mean, if you heard him playing upright, you wouldn't think that he'd be able to play electric the way he plays, and you heard him playing electric, you wouldn't think that he would be the upright player that
Well,
he is.
and the thing is that people that don't play bass don't realize how different those instruments are. I mean, I'm an electric player, and I mean, I can noodle around on an upright, but I'm not an upright player. I mean, that's a whole other world. I mean,
It
just
is.
everything about intonation, having no frets. you know.
Well, and I think that helped me with my electric playing, sort of getting into really the electric game kind of late in the game. I feel like that was a little bit of leg up. I mean, I had the technique, I had the fingerboard knowledge, I had the theory knowledge. It kind of, it made a lot of things fall into place pretty easy for me.
That's cool.
so.
That's cool. And here you are in Nashville playing with country legend Trace
And here-
Adkins.
It's wild. When you say, I mean, it's kind of, it's hard to believe, but I'm not done. There's always
Well,
wanna
I've
keep
heard you play,
grinding
and you're a killer bass
Oh,
player. So I mean,
well,
good
thank you.
Lord. I mean, some of the stuff he posts, I'm just like, man, that's a.
Oh, you're too kind, man.
Well, no, it's I speak truth.
So, Chris, tell us how people could find you. I know you don't want to hand out your phone number, so your socials.
Yeah, so it's Eric. No,
Okay, how can people find you? Instagram, YouTube?
Instagram is probably I am on YouTube. I've kind of slacked on the whole YouTube thing. I made it a point to just record some cover videos. I know that's not the most ideal, but that's another place where I started was social media, just being able to put things out there
Yeah.
and see what landed. So probably the best way though is on Instagram. Chris _ my last name Haughey is my Instagram handle. So.
Well, check Chris out. Check him out on the road with Trace Adkins with John Spittle there, and go get you some. Get you some Chris.
That's right.
All right.